So, for my final video of the evening, I wanted to talk about the slavery in Libya that's still happening to today. Now, if you don't know, last December it broke that there were black African people, I think it was mainly from Nigeria, who were being sold off at an auction in Libya, and it was the Arabs who were selling them off to be sold as slaves. And it really disturbed me to see that, because people think that slavery has gone away and that it no longer exists. But the truth of the matter is, it does exist. It is still a major issue. And you would think in a majority black region like Africa, these things would not happen. But then again, you have to remember, Northern Africa is not the same as West Africa. So when this whole broke, you saw them, you know, being sold, and there was also a load of pictures that went around of. So as I said, you saw on the internet pictures going around of them injured, brutalized, look like they've been whipped, all these kind of things. And like, there was this one really particular picture where I can't get the images out of my head, but you like see the face of this black guy, and I don't know what they'd done, like whether it was some acid or something, but his face did not look right. And to share that image around, I just don't even have the words, because it's like, even though we know slavery in Libya is going on, I think most people can kind of, well, it doesn't really bother me until I actually see images like that, even though it did bother me from when I first heard about it and I saw the video. Some of the images are so upsetting and disturbing, it's kind of like, whoa. It's like, you can't be desensitized to that. If you can, it's only because you've seen so much that eventually your emotions just go into lockdown and you can't really function properly. But like I was saying in the beginning of this video, people always assume slavery ended in the Caribbean in 1807, and then it ended when it did in America, and then that's it. But then we have to remember that slavery can take many forms. You've heard a lot about black children who have been trafficked from Africa to different countries to be working as sex slaves. And even children here in the UK, black children, black girls specifically, being taken from here in the UK to be sex slaves abroad in other countries in Europe. And these things go underneath the radar. Have you ever noticed when you try to Google it about sex trafficking, they always talk about European girls, European girls, European girls. It's not just them. Black girls are being sex trafficked as well to be slaves. Sometimes they get trafficked not to be sex slaves, but just to be the slave of a couple. So they're basically working as like a maid, but they get treated appallingly. And the funny thing is, I will never understand the mentality of taking someone's precious child away, to kidnapping them, possibly hitting them, abusing them on the way, to take them to someone else, another couple, to basically be some kind of lapdog to them. And I will never understand that at all. And then it just makes you think, like, you must not have an ounce of conscience if you think having someone else's child who you didn't legally adopt, who was stolen away from their family, the family who loves them, to be given to you and you don't feel no way about it. It's madness, it's evil, it's wrong, and they don't feel no way about it. You don't feel no way about it at all. You clearly think it's acceptable for that to be continuing to happen. And this is the thing. Within Northern Africa, in Libya, slavery is still going on. I mean, back in January, because of all what happened in December, this whole situation broke back in January, Nigerians who were slaves in Libya have came out and said, this is my experience of what happened. However, it's still an ongoing issue. Only a few Nigerians have been removed. It's still going on. It's not stopped. And this is the thing. All these issues that impact mainly upon black people are not going away anywhere. Slavery is still impacting upon us. Racism is still impacting upon us. We've still been oppressed worldwide. I mean, there are certain countries where Indian people are the dominant society, and they are oppressing and beating upon black women in their countries. There are black women here in the UK who are being racially insulted and racially abused by white people, and nothing is being done about it. And I've also mentioned this several times on in my videos, because I've spoken about these incidents. I've spoken about them. So the fact that nothing is truly being addressed, it's like, oh, it gets reported to the police may arrest them, but them being charged is a whole nother story altogether, and they may not even go to prison. And the thing about this whole situation from what's happening in Libya is these slaves may be freed, these enslaved African people may be freed, but where is the true condemnation? Where is the actual repercussions for what these Libyans are doing to them? Like, where is it? I mean, it's not just Nigerians, it's also black Libyans who are being enslaved by the Arabs who live in Libya. So it's like, as long as you are black, you can be oppressed by other races. And this is the thing. We know that white people have a long history of slavery. However, the Arabs, they were the ones, if you do your research, they were the ones who started this. But white people obviously took it a step further, transatlantic slavery. I know some people think it's a myth. They'll be like, where's the slave ships? Look, listen, there's plenty of evidence where you can go to see these slave ships. I don't know why you would want to see them. Why? But yes, there is plenty of evidence there to say that they existed. I don't understand why you feel as a black person to question this. Why you would even want to question it. I mean, even here on YouTube, there is videos you can listen to where you can hear actual African Americans who were slaves, listening to them speaking about what actually happened to them. Now, these people are long gone. However, that legacy is still there. Their voice is captured on tape, and you can hear them speaking about what happened to them. So for you to say, oh, just because they didn't come over on a slave ship, or the slave ship didn't exist, you're trying to say, well, slavery was only like a small little thing. No, it was a massive global thing. Multiple countries were involved. It wasn't just countries here in Europe. It was also Brazil was also involved. Portugal was also involved. The Spanish also got involved. Like, every single, like, a lot of these countries, they got involved. And this is the thing. It's like, what would it take for, like, one of them to have said, you know what, I don't think this is right. I'm not going to get involved. No, because they all wanted to work together to oppress black African people and actively say, well, and it's all for economic reasons. The money that was built up during the slave trade in the Caribbean, of them harvesting the sugarcane, breaking their backs, being whipped daily, being put into shackles. Even the children, they even had these little tiny shackles for the little children as well. And another thing to realize about slavery in the Caribbean is that they had high mortality rates, so they kept having to ship more and more and more Africans into the Caribbean because they kept dying, because the environment wasn't sufficient for them to live. They kept dying. Not enough babies were being born, and if the babies were being born, the babies were dying. And I know this is gonna sound fucked up, but you know what? I'm actually glad the babies died, because I know it's gonna sound wrong, but just imagine being born into that environment and surviving and having to be a slave. It's like if God does exist, then he took them out early. Now I know it's gonna sound mean. They're gonna be like, what the hell? But seriously, they do not deserve that. The people who was alive and had to suffer from that, they didn't have to deserve that either. But most importantly, when you were just like a fresh baby just coming to the world, you most certainly do not deserve that. And the thing is, because so many Africans kept being shipped into the Caribbean, it's why we technically have a stronger hold onto our culture in some ways, because so many of the African people got shipped. So, you know, and that was like something we could hold on to, so we didn't completely lose our roots. But obviously things change over time. Things change and develop. Like, you have to remember the time that this was going on, so obviously culture would change. We kept hold on to a few of the things, but not everything. But we were still able to keep a hold on to a lot more than some other countries, which is fortunate, but at the same time it should never have happened. Black people are not indigenous to the Caribbean. We may be in some, like, it will take a few more years and then we can say we are definitely indigenous to the Caribbean, but at the moment we're still not. Black people are being born there, but our roots are still directly from Africa. And this is the thing, we may not know exactly where in Africa we come from, but our roots are still directly linked to Africa. You can link that our slaves came over and the slave ships were taken to the Americas, which is the Caribbean, and you can find that direct link. But then when you think about the slavery that's happening today in Libya, it's like, what is it gonna take to end that? Because you think in 2018 these things will no longer happen. You would think, oh yes, slavery ended in Britain in 1807, but it took a few more years after that for that to actually end in the Caribbean. So then it's gonna be like, when is slavery in Libya gonna end? When are the Arabs gonna stop enslaving the black Libyans and black Nigerians? And when are the African leaders going to come together as a whole continent and say, you know what, this isn't right. We are going to forcibly make them release those slaves. And it's funny though, because we've got the black Nigerians being enslaved in Libya. We've got the black Libyans being enslaved in Libya. We've got the Chinese encroaching on all these countries, and all these African countries, and African leaders don't seem to be doing anything at the moment. Like, why are you letting the Chinese in to build up all these things? It's always about money at the end of the day. You clearly seem to not care about your own people if you think that it's acceptable for your own people to be enslaved, and you don't sit there and think to myself, you know what, What the hell is going on? Are you that mentally enslaved that you think it's okay for something like that to happen and still happen in 2018? And you don't think, oh, let me do something about this, let me overpower them, because these countries are black dominated countries. So I don't understand how someone who is a minority can overpower you to that degree and that level. I don't know everything. I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm saying, how can you as an African leader let Arabs come into these countries and take you away, take your own people away, and you not think to do anything? How can you as an African leader let the Chinese come into your countries and build up these countries and not even hire none of your people to work for them? Instead they're bringing their own people in to come work, and you don't see a problem with that? Do you honestly need money that badly? And it's always about money. The Arabs clearly want more money, so therefore they're gonna get that money off the back of my people. Like, I don't even have the words anymore to keep talking about these situations, because it's becoming a joke. It's becoming a joke. It's so evil, it's so vile, and they don't care. They don't care. Even African leaders seem not to care, because I don't see them addressing these issues. It's just like in my other video when I mentioned, my video I did months ago, when I was talking about how the new president of Zimbabwe is saying that is it Zimbabwe? Hold on one sec. Yes, the new president of Zimbabwe is allowing the white Zimbabweans to have their, is going to take away land from black Zimbabweans and give it back to white people. And I found that absolutely madness, because I was just curious as to why he felt the need to do that. You think in a black dominant country, white people should not be there in the first place? The same white people who oppressed you, you're still mentally enslaved to the point where you feel you need to give back to them, but yet they're not giving us anything back. You're not giving us anything back, so why should we give you something back? It don't even make any sense. And it's the same thing with this president of Zimbabwe giving land back to white farmers, because he said the land was stolen, even though white people stole land from across the world to get their money, but yet we have to give them something back, something that's so small that should be kept within the black farmers so they can build themselves up, but yet you want to give it back to the white Zimbabweans. Like, no. And then this whole issue with Libya, these African leaders, they're not addressing this situation either. And then you got the Chinese doing basically colonization number 3. And these African leaders, they're not going to see it until it hits them much later down the line, when our people are going to be enslaved in mass numbers. You're not going to see it until then. But yes, let them come into your individual countries in Africa, and let them come and build up themselves and make themselves money. And because they're doing this is why by 2050 or whatever, they're going to be the ones in power. Yeah, they're going to be the main ones in power. And what will Africa have left? What will you have left? But seriously, the main issue is black people are enslaved in Libya, and why is nothing being done about this? And I would feel like I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't mention this, because I could have mentioned it when it first happened last December, so 11 months ago. But I said to myself, you know what? I'm not in that space to do that kind of video yet, so let me give it some time, but I'm going to do it now. And ask myself why it was barely even reported upon in the news, in the media. All these newspapers can talk about some minor issues, but something massive like that happens and they don't want to talk about it. Because, oh, remember, racism no longer exists. Okay? So, bye.